I suck at Japanese, and here is why. My name's Aidan. At the time of filming this video, I'm 25, and I've spent a little over a year living and working in Japan. And I'm approaching 2 years of actually studying the language. I don't know if you can tell from my accent, but I am from the UK, which means obviously my first language is English. So this, fortunately and unfortunately, has given me the privilege of not really needing to learn another language when I travel. And up until this point, I've traveled to close to 30 countries, and for the most part, you can get by with just speaking English. You see, now many countries around the world have sort of adapted and adjusted to the English language. However, in the autumn of 2023, I would find myself on a one-way flight to Tokyo, Japan, to live and work in the country. If you don't know much about Japan, famously they've not adapted to English. That's not a complaint, just for the record, that's literally just an observation, but regardless, it is the case. Either way, the bottom line was that I was gonna have to learn the language. Like, I needed to learn Japanese. So at the point of filming this in January 2026, I've been learning Japanese just shy of 2 years. However, I still struggle to maintain everyday basic conversation in Japanese, which was one of my main goals from day one of learning the language. And I guess that's exactly where my mistakes began, obviously, from day one. So from day one of learning, I did have the motivation and the excitement that comes when starting a new challenge or a new hobby. However, from that day, there's one thing I've never had up until now, which was a routine. Every day I would just decide what I was going to do on that day, whether it was going to smash flashcards or flick through textbooks or watch YouTube lessons, study vocab sheets. There was no consistency. I don't think I need to explain why, when learning a new skill, any new skill, that consistency and routine is probably the most important thing. So over time, this led me to focus more on the areas of Japanese study that were most enjoyable or most comfortable to me, which in turn led to me neglecting the weaker areas of my Japanese. To date, those weak areas are still my listening and my speaking. There's a chance you might be shocked to hear that. If you recall earlier in the video, when I said I did actually spend a whole year, or just over a year, living and working in Japan, which does lead me to the second biggest mistake I made, which was just not utilizing my surroundings or my environment. So after moving to Japan, for the first month or two of getting accustomed to life in Japan, I very easily got comfortable just relying on my survival phrases, my survival Japanese, like how to order in restaurants, bars, just please, thank you, common convenience store phrases. This led to very little improvement in my speaking and listening, as I was just saying and hearing these same several sentences and phrases over and over again. On top of that, I was living in a share house. However, all my housemates were English speakers, mostly from Germany for some reason, but they did speak good English. There's a couple Americans, Australians, other Europeans, regardless of where they were from. The bottom line is they all spoke English to a fluent or good level. So that was like the default language of the house, which meant at home there was very, very little room to speak and hear Japanese. Not to worry, I thought this would all change when I find a job, right? Surely working in Japan, my Japanese was bound to improve, right? Wrong, very wrong. Unsurprisingly, the most common job in Tokyo for someone in my situation with my inept Japanese ability pretty much boiled down to being an English teacher. So around the 1 month mark of my time in Tokyo, I did actually successfully get a job offer for an eikaiwa, which if you don't know is like a private Japanese English conversation school. So not Japanese, just English. This school would also be where I would ultimately make the majority of my friends during my time in Japan. This did mean that at my share house I was using English, at work I was using English, and the majority of my friends I made all spoke English to a very high level. So the little speaking practice I was getting was just my survival phrases at the local 7-Eleven and Family Mart, and when I would go out to izakayas with my friends. I think the bottom line was, although I was living in Japan, I was thinking, working, socializing, and relaxing in English. At the time of recording this, I am living back in the UK, and more recently have been finding ways of studying that work better for me. Which is funny because when I speak with my Japanese friends, they're actually shocked at how much I've improved since I was in Japan. So I've improved so much since leaving Japan, which seems like a bit counterintuitive, I guess, which just shows how much I wasn't utilizing my surroundings anywhere near as much as I should have been during my time in Japan. And that kind of leads me conveniently to the third reason why I still suck at Japanese. Anyone who has Googled anything about learning Japanese or has watched any videos on advice for learning the language will have heard the word immersion about 1 billion times. It's no secret that for any language, actually surrounding yourself with the language is the best way to take it in. Through daily conversation, culture, music, movies, TV, street signs, the list goes on. Like just whatever words, languages you see day to day, just replace that with Japanese or Spanish or French or whatever you're learning. However, a crucial part that took me far too long to realize was that exposure doesn't count as study. The language just being near you doesn't teach you, at least not at a speed that's worth mentioning. This was something I naively overlooked. I genuinely thought by living and working in Japan that I would just soak up the language, even without studying. Just seeing it and hearing it every day, eventually it would just click and I'd understand like what everyone was saying around me. Obviously I realize now that's just crazy. This bad habit even continued long after I'd left Japan. I'm lucky that my job now in the UK allows me to listen to music in the background if I want to, whilst working. So Monday to Friday, I'd very often just have Japanese podcasts or Japanese vlogs on in the background whilst I'm working, and I'd have them on with that same belief that I'd just soak up the language. What made this extra ineffective was the fact that I wasn't even focusing on the listening. My focus was on the main task I was doing. So in this case, my focus was on my work, as it should be. Like I'm there to work, I'm not there to learn Japanese. I've realized now that just 15 to 20 minutes of focused Japanese listening, where I'm actually present, watching, trying to listen and understand what's being said, pausing and replaying the video if I have to, that's far, far, far more helpful and beneficial than just having an 8-hour YouTube playlist of Japanese conversation or Japanese podcasts on in the background, which I'm not even listening to. Anki. If you study Japanese, you know Anki. If not, Anki is a powerful, free, open source flashcard software that uses basically, it's a flashcard app. That's what it is. It's a flashcard app. Everyone loves Anki, and I do too. It's almost impossible to dispute its usefulness for language learning, especially language learning with complex characters like kanji in Japanese. However, there were several mistakes that I made when adopting Anki into my Japanese study. Number one was stressing over finding the right deck. You see, that's just personal preference. Me personally, I use the Kaishi 1.5K deck, and I prefer that personally over the Core 2K 6K deck, which seems to be the most popular deck for beginners for Japanese. But the real issue with Anki for me started when I actually began using Anki consistently. By default, Anki shows you 10 new cards a day, which felt fine at first, especially since I already recognized a lot of the early vocab. But very quickly it became unrealistic. 10 words a day turned into recalling dozens and dozens of words every single day. And before long, my daily reviews were taking close to an hour, which is just not manageable. Instead of adjusting properly, I pushed through until inevitably I just burnt out. I'd stop using Anki for like weeks at a time, and when I did come back, I'd just be hit with hundreds of reviews waiting for me, and that cycle repeated itself more than once. Looking back, Anki wasn't helping my Japanese like it should. It was actively putting me off studying because it just felt like too overwhelming, which was my fault because of how I poorly optimized the app. Eventually, I did optimize the deck to give me a manageable workload each day. I still don't use it perfectly, but for the first time in the 2 years of using it, it feels sustainable, and honestly that's made a huge difference for learning as well. Finally, the last mistake I've made, and one I'm still making, is just a lack of output, a lack of speaking. From the very beginning, my short-term goal with Japanese has always been simple, basic conversation, like, small talk, everyday interactions. And yet my weakest areas are still listening and speaking, which again is entirely my own fault. Even now, I rarely actually speak Japanese. Part of the reason is fear, like fear of making mistakes, fear of that awkward silence when a sentence doesn't quite land. That fear hit me hard last October when I did actually go back to Japan for a couple of weeks to spend time with my girlfriend's family and a couple of her friends, most of whom don't speak any English, despite a couple common words. I realized then just how little I was actually able to communicate in Japanese. So, just for the last point, I'm actually going to switch to Japanese just for a couple of sentences, just so I can get some output, get some practice. So please excuse my pronunciation. 日本語あまり話しません。間違えるのがちょっと怖いです。でも日本語が上手になりたいです。だからもっと話します。少しずつ頑張ります。I guess the point is, every time I push myself to speak, even with mistakes, I make progress, and that fear of speaking has been holding me back from progressing for far too long. We are actually planning to go back to Japan again for several weeks this October again, so I have a perfect target for improvement. So those are the main reasons I still suck at Japanese. So you got inconsistency, not fully using my environment, especially when in Japan, assuming exposure is the same as study, struggling with Anki, and not speaking enough, not enough output. I know I'm nowhere near my end goal. I still have a long way to go, but I've learned a lot about myself and my approach to learning anything, not just Japanese. This definitely isn't me quitting. It's just me being honest about where I've struggled in my language journey, and finally sort of recognizing what's been holding me back. If there's one thing I've realized, is that learning a language isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, making mistakes, and slowly improving step by step, being consistent. Hopefully looking back on this video in a year from now, I'll be able to say I've made real progress, and maybe even do the whole video in Japanese. Bye bye.